It was a typical boring day in calculus, only it was Friday, 7th period, meaning the week was almost over and spring break would finally be upon us. So everybody was getting antsy in their seats. I could tell we didn't have a test that day, like a lot of my friends and their other teachers. So our teacher in the middle of class just decided to start playing games with us on Sparkle.com. He was a very laid-back teacher like that. As we were doing some brand logo quiz on Sparkle, I remember the exact moment it happened. Right after my friend answered the question, I remember the exact answer too, Adidas. The dean's voice came through the loudspeaker. He sounded panicked and frantic as he told all the teachers that this was not a drill and to go into lockdown. I actually got the chills and I got goosebumps on my arms, as our usually laid-back teacher too seemed panicked as he ran to turn off the lights and usher us to the back corner of the room. We all sat in silence for about 2 minutes, and then the usual buzzing that came from the panel in the back of the room ceased, indicating that the school must have had the power cut. We all looked at each other, realizing that this must be serious. Later, we heard a man screaming at the top of his lungs coming down the hallway. 2 girls in the class actually started crying, which made all of us even more scared. As the screaming got closer to the classroom, the lunatic-sounding man started banging on the lockers and screaming, "I'll kill all of you." It was at that moment that I started to fear for my life, my teacher shushing us all as we all looked at each other to see our peers' reactions. The banging then moved from the lockers to our classroom door, and that's when one of the crying girls screamed, "No!" The banging on the door only grew worse, and the man started screaming, "Open up!" 2 of the girls in the class were crying out loud now. It felt like an eternity that the man was pounding at the door, but eventually he finally continued down the hallways, screaming like a mentally insane person until we could not hear him anymore. I'd say 10 minutes later, though it felt like half an hour given the situation, the dean came back on the loudspeaker, explaining the situation, which was surprising for him too. He explained that some apparently mentally unstable person entered the building and assaulted the woman sitting at the front desk, causing her to flee the building screaming, and staff wasn't sure if the man was armed or not. Now, this was all before the school had cameras or could afford proper security, so the school was wide open to something like this happening. The staff had done a sweep of all the hallways and classrooms and couldn't find him, so the dean instructed the teachers to resume teaching, but to keep all the doors locked and to not let any of the students leave for any reason. The most disturbing part, however, is that one of the janitors working the night shift found the man sleeping in one of the storage closets near the back of the school. And, according to rumors that were spread by my peers, sticking out of his pocket was a .44 Magnum. The janitor must have done something stupid to wake him up, for example, leaving the closet door open, because by the time the police officers could arrive on the scene, the man was gone. My entire class, as far as I know to this day, has no idea if this man has ever been found. But I like to think that right now he's been given the proper help that he needs. I'm 22 years old, fresh out of college, and I recently got a job at my old high school, as sort of a computer intern in the school basement. The basement of the school is very messy and disorganized, but there is a small 3-person office that's actually very nice down there. It has 3 nice big desks, 2 mini fridges, a flat screen TV mounted on the wall, and also satisfying air conditioning, a luxury the students and teachers cannot enjoy in the school, and of course, all the school servers and other computer stuff. I got the job because 3 of my old computer teachers flat out adored me. I could actually consider them as real friends, not just teacher figures, so they all helped me tremendously in landing this job. It's been great until something that happened a few weeks ago. My 2 co-workers that share an office with me, Dave and Gary, weren't in the office at the time. They were upstairs working on papers or whatever. I was eating my sandwich during my lunch break, and I got a phone call from one of the women in the front office. She told me the school was in lockdown, and that somebody that was possibly armed had entered the school. There wasn't much that I could do other than turn off the lights, because surprisingly, as nice as the little office was, it didn't have an actual door, just a big opening. And the door to the whole basement didn't even have a working lock. For my own safety, I did turn off all the lights in the computer screen. I kept my phone on the desk, texting both Gary and Dave, but they wouldn't respond. I sat down there in the dark, playing games on my phone for like 20 minutes, waiting for the call from up front to tell me to resume working. I had no idea what was happening. I couldn't hear what was going on upstairs from down here, but I was not allowed to make any calls until I was informed that the lockdown was over. Then, the noisy basement door opened as the creaking echoed across the basement and into my office. I sat up from my seat, wondering if I should call out to Gary or Dave. I was eager to get some info from them. Someone then came running down the stairs, and their footsteps were approaching my office. I pushed away my chair and crawled under my desk. Somebody entered the office, but did not turn on the lights. There was just silence. I can't even describe the fear I was experiencing. I felt like if I made one sudden noise, I'd be a dead man. Suddenly, my phone dinged as I got a text message. I felt my entire world shrivel up and die at that moment, as I clenched my teeth in fear. Footsteps suddenly moved closer to me until I finally dug out from under the desk, encapsulation, begging whoever it was not to kill me. And just then, someone grabbed my arm and pulled me up. It was some guy in red plaid button-up jeans and a reddish-black cap. He told me, "It's okay, I'm just down here hiding with you." "What's going on up there?" I whispered to him. He kind of ignored my question and asked me if there was an exit down here. I told him, "Yeah, around that way." Before he could do anything else, I asked him, "Who are you?" There was a brief moment of silence before he started to explain. He was coming to pick up his son when a teacher told him to hide. After his explanation, I checked my phone and I saw a text that I received from Dave. It said, "Dude, this is crazy. Some guy with a gun shot Mr. Buckley. He's wearing a red shirt and a hat. Whatever you do, don't come upstairs." I was about to reread the text out loud to the man until I realized. I looked up and I felt my stomach sink. The man seemed to catch on to my suspicious stare. Panicking, all I could think to do was to run upstairs. A gunshot echoed through the basement, and I could hear the bullet ricochet off some metal in the darkness. But thank God, that bullet missed me, and I made it upstairs. Fortunately, the police were waiting at all exits, including the basement exit, and the man was caught the second he opened the door. More good news is our teacher, Mr. Buckley, survived the gunshot. It was later determined that the man and Mr. Buckley had some beef for whatever reason, but it was never revealed. All we know is that Mr. Buckley couldn't have done anything that would have warranted this kind of reaction, and I know the sound of that gunshot will forever echo in my mind. This past October, I was talking to a girl I met at a party a month prior. For the purpose of the story, she'll be named Nikki. We had been talking and hanging out like once a week for a few weeks. She wanted to do a bunch of October activities, so I came up with the idea that we go apple picking. She loved it, so we hopped in a car to take a trip over to the nearest apple picking orchard, which was about a half an hour away, out of the suburbs, the more rural part of the area. We live in Jersey, and there's an abundance of places to go, but I let her pick where. She said we were still about 20 minutes away, and we were driving down a scenic road with little to no traffic. We actually passed what appeared to be another apple orchard, so we turned down this dirt road into a small wooden farmhouse. But there were no cars and no people, not even a little stand where we could go to pay to enter. It seemed it wasn't open for business, or maybe just wasn't open to the public at all. The house was very poorly kept. It almost looked as though nobody lived there. As we walked around the property, Nikki said she felt uncomfortable, so we got back in the car and continued the route to the originally planned destination. However, when we got there, this one was also void of people, though this one at least had a closed sign on the stand. I told her, what if we went back to the first orchard that looked almost abandoned, and we just go picking there? We'd have the whole place to ourselves. At first, she was hesitant, but I convinced her. So I drove us back and found a low-key place to park on the grass by the woods. We walked through, crushing leaves on the dirt path. We were trying to be discreet, but that was out of the window. There was a little wooden fence we had to hop, but it was easy. Once inside, we were hidden by the symmetrical rows of thick apple trees, but our feet were also covered in tall grass up to our shins. We started walking down the row of trees, filling the plastic bags we brought from my car with the best apples we could find. Though admittedly there weren't many, there was a certain thrill in doing this, knowing we weren't supposed to. We had some fun with it. I was launching apples up in the air, and then I would start pretending like I was going to throw apples at Nikki, and she started screaming, running off, and telling me to stop. She cut through a couple trees to another row, and when we got to the other side, I didn't see her. "Where are you?" I said. She called back, "I'm picking my own apples." And she actually sounded like she was a few rows over. I apologized, laughing, telling her I'd stop, but she didn't answer. I spent a few minutes trying to find her, and suddenly an apple landed right in front of me, which had been tossed from a few rows nearby. and another one landed close by. I yelled, "Stop," because I was actually afraid of getting hit in the head, and I ran through a couple of trees, and each row I'd pass, I'd look left and right trying to find Nikki. I went down this row and I went through the first couple of trees I could fit through to get to the next side, because there was some guy and a young guy, like 18 or 19 years old, with long black hair to his shoulder, standing in the center of the row, maybe 5 trees away from me. It looked like he had a slight smirk on his face. He didn't move, so I did. I squeezed through the next row, and then the next. Then Nikki called my phone. I picked up in a hurry and whispered, "Where are you?" She sounded like she was in a panic. She said into the phone there was a creepy guy that was following her around. She tried talking to him, but he wouldn't say anything, and he looked like he wanted to hurt her, and her description of him matched exactly the guy that I saw. I told her to meet me back at the car, and I ran all the way back. Nikki was already waiting at the car. We stopped to discuss what had just happened, but Nikki yelled, "There he is," and pointed in front of us. I looked and I could see him there. He was half hidden by an apple tree, and we could only see his left arm and left leg and half his face. The way he just creepily spied on us, I had to get away. And so I did a 3-point turn off the grass and onto the dirt road. We passed the decrepit barn lake house and got back on the road. We talked over possibilities. Maybe he lived there. We passed by a fruit stand on the side of the road with a few people working on it. Nikki and I lost our apple bags, so we figured we'd just stop there. We picked up some apples and berries, and I just had to ask them about the apple orchard down the road. The 2 ladies working at the fruit stand proclaimed nobody should ever go anywhere near there. The owner's son had killed his girlfriend and then disappeared. The body was found near the orchard in the forest. The dad still owns the orchard, but to this day he hardly ever returns and doesn't keep up the place. We practically jumped in their faces as we asked them to describe the son, but they never seen him and don't know anything about him. I admitted to them that we went apple picking on the property and some creepy young man was following us. The 2 women said that it was best that we just got out of there when we did. They also kind of scolded us for not calling the police. However, one of the ladies did say she was going to warn the police. On the drive home, Nikki spoke to me about it. Everything she said really went in one ear and out the other, because I really thought to myself he actually ran face to face with a missing murderer in an apple orchard. And I still get chills wondering if that guy is still out there in the orchard. Did you like the story? Check out our channel for more.